Welcome to the How Hot is Your Product Kickstart meeting for those of you who have purchased the How Hot is Your Product system. The intention of this webinar is to help you get started evaluating your product idea. And we'll be following the exact order of the steps in your book and workbook. And all of this information is available in the private members area where you have access to the in-depth video tutorials. But we just wanted to give you some extra support to help you get started right now. My name is Tamara Monosoff, and I'm the founder of mominvented.com and my new mentoring and training website, tamaramonosoff.com. And I'm the author of 5 business books for entrepreneurs and the co-creator of the How Hot is Your Product 10-step product evaluation system to help you find out if your product idea will make or cost you money. And I'd like to introduce you to Brad Kofed, the co-creator of the How Hot is Your Product system and a product development, brand licensing, and sales expert. Brad has launched national consumer brands and built sales programs for the consumer products, software, and internet industries. And he's also my husband of 22 years.
Looking forward to this.
Welcome, Brad, and all of you to this seminar. And many people ask me, what is the first step to developing my product idea or invention? Or they ask me, I just need to know how to get started. Well, you've found the right place.
And just by watching this video, you've just started. I hope that you will actually give yourself credit for being here and for taking this very important step.
Many of you already know my story. You may already know my story, but 10 years ago, I wrote the Mom Inventor's Handbook, and 4 more books later, I co-created this system. And recently, I was asked in a media interview, why didn't you write this book first? And I laughed out loud at the question because I couldn't have written this book first. I didn't know what I didn't know. And it's taken a decade to figure all of this out. It took us nearly 2 years, wasn't it, Brad, to create this system and to test it out?
That's right. The system was non-existent. As far as we know, even today, nothing like it exists. We had to create it from scratch.
So whether you're just now starting with your product idea or if you've launched into this process already, it's perfectly fine to just take a moment's pause and join us and go through these steps in this system. If I had this system after I launched my first product, the TP Saver, I may have taken an entirely different direction. So let's get started.
Yeah, let's do it.
So we're looking at product development and market research, and as we mentioned, we've searched everywhere for this system, and we've used the system to not only on our own products, but to successfully help others as well. And then we realized that people desperately needed the system for their own businesses. I'm going to just tell you 3 quick little stories. One inventor that I met at the International Houseware Show had come up to me, and she took her prototype out of her bag and she said, I've spent $80,000 and my product is still not on the market. $80,000. And I thought, okay, we have got to share this system with others so that she did not spend this money, that she had gone through the steps to properly evaluate her product. Another person came to us after they had 20,000 units in their garage, said that they had a retailer, a mass retailer, really interested in carrying her product. But when they asked her to give proof of liability insurance, she didn't have liability insurance. So when she went out to find it, unfortunately, she couldn't get coverage because of the nature of her product. And then finally, there was another inventor with a high quality, wonderfully designed product, but unfortunately she had used such high quality material that the price point was so high that retailers had to put it at a price point where consumers simply would not purchase it. So I'm telling you these stories not to scare you, but really to let you know that all of this can be prevented by taking these steps ahead of time.
Every one of those steps, every one of those challenges could have been had a positive ending and may still have had a positive ending. However, it doesn't have to get so far down the path before the issues are addressed. So the first story Tamara mentioned could have been addressed during the design phase. There would have probably been a different approach taken to the design phase, or even at this stage, she may have identified different markets and so on.
So just in terms of how to look at your product from the very beginning, it's important to not look at your product as your baby. I've had so many people say this to me over the years. This is my baby. I've invested everything in it. This is a business opportunity and nothing more. And your product needs to prove itself to you financially. You have to make sure it's financially viable before you spend a fortune developing and launching it. So the way to get started with this process is to document where you are right now. And one of the things that I found to be interesting is that people skip this step. They're like, I don't want to. I just want to dive straight in. This is an important step. It's taking stock in where you are right now. It's creating a baseline of information and writing down what you know about your product at this point. And then as you go through all these steps, at the very end, you're going to be able to do a product review and look back and see how much you've learned and grown throughout this process.
On the self-assessment section, this is, again, for your own benefit. And in this section, you're going to go through the process of really identifying what is the purpose of doing this. What are your personal goals? Is this for fun, or is this a real business adventure? And really understanding what is your expectation. So you're straight with yourself, as well as when you start talking about your product to others, you have a clear explanation as to where you want to go with this. Some people, it's a hobby, it's a creative outlet. Others, it's a true business adventure. Some people need extra money. Some people, it'd be nice to make extra money, but the real reward will just be to see the product on store shelves, or see a packaged product in the end, or actually just to sell it to friends and family. But another key element to this is understanding what is your risk tolerance. The product business is not a simple low-risk business. It's a real business with real money at stake. And so understanding where are you in terms of risk. Now, some people have a very low risk tolerance. That's fine. But going into the process of launching a business, it's helpful to know that. You may take a different approach to your business if you have a very low risk tolerance. On the other hand, if you have a high risk tolerance and you can afford to hit it big, or to perhaps fail or have challenges, then you know that as well. But it really helps you understand where you stand today, so in a year or 2 years down the road, you are in sync with yourself in terms of where you're at and what you faced. And that risk continuum really walks you through the process just by asking you some questions that help you put yourself on a risk continuum. Another tool that we created is this simple table to help you assess where are you at today. Start as a starting point. Just to understand, this isn't to say if you have challenges you don't go forward, or if you have tremendous advantage you go forward. What it really helps you assess is, realistically, what are the challenges that I have to overcome in this process? If you rank yourself in all 8 of these categories as a 3, you'll have a score of 24. If you score yourself as a 24, that's a neutral score. You're neither challenged or advantaged. On the other hand, if your score is above a 24, you'll have some advantage, and if it's below you, you'll have some challenges. Nonetheless, again, this is about you. This isn't about us or anybody else. It's really about you having a good sense of being honest with yourself. Where are you at today in relation to this process and the challenges or advantages that you have? This is really where the rubber starts to meet the road in this assessment. What is the true size of your market? And we need to go, as a business, we need to go into this business knowing what is the true business opportunity. And again, business is about customers, business is about sales, and business is about revenue. And without knowing who the customers are, how many there are, you don't really have a business. So we start big picture. What is the true size of your market? And we use US Census data, we use Google statistics. Another way that we find this information is we find public companies in your industry. And in the book and in the workbook, you'll see the steps where you actually identify public companies that have products that may be similar to your industry. So if you're in the pet industry, you might go to a company, a public company that sells pet items. And public companies they have to publish information about their business on public websites. And so you can actually read the content and the statistics that they've come up with. And leveraging, one of the key things that this whole system is about is leveraging the work of others. As an individual entrepreneur, as an individual inventor, you don't have a staff of 10 marketing people to go out and do this for you. However, you can take advantage of all those companies that do, because they publish this information. And there's just a huge amount of information available today, frankly, that wasn't available 10 years ago when we started. You're going to identify relatable products. So you're going to look at products in the market that are similar to yours, or perhaps they may not be similar to your item, but they may comfortably fit within a category that you'd find your item in. So you're going to find those items, and you want to look up those companies and do Google statistic research on those items. And then you're going to identify industry-specific publications and associations. Again, a wealth of information. So if your product is in a particular industry, if it's in the pet industry or in the housewares industry, in the baby industry, or whatever industry it may be in, there are relevant and pertinent industry associations that serve those industries. And you're going to go to those industry associations. You're going to look for statistical data on those websites. You're going to look up the publications that serve that industry, and every industry has its own publications. And you're going to look up statistical information in those publications and read the stories and get familiar with your industries. And you're just really becoming a student of your industry and of your product. And I'm here to say, if you do this, you will set yourself so far ahead of other people trying to accomplish the same thing that it'll make a tremendous difference in your success.
And I think I just want to mention that if you're thinking, oh my gosh, how do I go about doing all of this, that in the private members area, the videos that we've done for you, we share our computer screen, and Brad actually takes you through all of these steps and shares his computer screen and shows you how to find this information.
Yeah, there's some great resources available now, and we don't have time in this webinar to go through each of them, but the resources are phenomenal, using tools like, as I mentioned, Google and Zoom Info and public websites. So once you've established or identified the big picture information, and I think we've said this before, where a lot of people stop is they identify, okay, the size of the market. In the juvenile market, we might say, okay, there are 6 million households with 1 to 2 year olds, or there are 4 million babies born every year in the U.S.,
or 77 million households with pets.
Precisely. Or even a dollar value on a market. We might say, okay, the arts and crafts market is a $50 billion industry, or the juvenile market's a $7 billion industry, or the housewares is a $300 billion, whatever so we find the big picture information. That tells you that there's money in the business, or there are people out there, but it does not tell you much about your product.
Well, I just wanted to jump in that what we have seen again and again is this is often where inventors, entrepreneurs stop. They think, oh, there's 77 million households with pets? Great, that's a big enough market for me. And even if I get a small percentage of that, that'll be enough. And what we're saying is that is too vague. It's great to have that big picture, but that's not enough. And Brad's going to talk about that.
And it really doesn't tell you, okay, that is a big market, but will enough of those people purchase my product to justify this business? And the answer may be yes, and I hope it is, but it also may raise a question. And as we mentioned before, we could have used this method very, very much ourselves. So if you look at the diagram here, this funnel, this pie slice diagram on the TP Saver example, TP Saver was Tamara's first product that we launched a long time ago. And when you look at the big picture information, it looks very promising. 6 million households with 1 and 2 year olds. My goodness, that's a large market. But then when you start to dissect that marketplace and you see that, well, and based on some of the survey research that Tamara's going to talk about in the next bullet, we would find out, okay, well, what percentage of people actually experience that problem? And that's a step that you need to take. Find out what percentage of that type of customer experiences that problem. Then you have to find out what percentage of that number of people would actually go to the trouble of buying something to solve it. Some people, I deal with issues all the time that, yeah, sure, it's inconvenient, but am I willing to pull out my credit card to actually address the problem? And oftentimes the answer is no. And then once you identify that, you need to figure out, okay, realistically, what portion of that market can I actually reach? There are 50,000 grocery and drugstores in America. People shop in all those grocery and drugstores. What number of those people can you actually reach doing this? Maybe your items, you don't need to reach that many people. Maybe it's a higher end item where you need to reach a much smaller slice of that. But it's important to understand and take this pie slice down. And this is there are only four circles in this bullseye. You could add a lot more, and the more you add, the better. And it's really going to benefit you to take these steps and go to that level of detail in really drilling down into your market.
So step 3, which is getting feedback, really ties into step 2. So with step 2, as Brad just mentioned, you're looking at the big picture, and now we're going to really narrow it down even further and get real consumer feedback to validate your data. And you can do this through conducting interviews, informal focus groups, conducting online surveys, and just from the experience that I had, I'll just tell you, with the informal focus groups, where you gather together friends of friends, not all people that you know, and really listen to what people are saying. I think one of the things that we tend to do when we fall in love with our product idea is that when we hear people say, oh, I don't really like it, or that's not something I would buy, that we think, well, they just don't get it. And, instead of realizing that, wow, maybe I need to listen to what they're saying, and what is it that they don't like, or what is it that they would change, or how would they do it differently, and incorporate that information into your product and how you're thinking about your product. Now, also in terms of conducting surveys, this is also a process. It's not just conducting one survey. You'll find that when you ask one survey, you're going to get invaluable information that's going to help you refine your questions. Somebody's going to say something that you think, oh, I didn't even think of that. Now I need to ask a whole group about that and see what they think.
And that's really that goes back to the point earlier about becoming a student of this. If you really commit to becoming a student of this process, you're not just trying to check boxes. You're trying to truly become the most knowledgeable person in this particular area on the planet. And so whatever you can do to continually refine your knowledge, you need to do. And this is a great process to go through. Thinking of your first survey is really just your first survey. And that's going to lead to the ability to get better and better survey data as you repeat the process in other ways.
And I'll just tell just a personal story when I used focus groups as well, is that the feedback that I received was incredible. And one woman had said, gosh, my kid could choke on the cap of the teepee saver. That had never even crossed my mind. And so then I found that there were indeed regulatory safety regulations as well as standards that we had to follow in designing your product. Now, this can all be done ahead of time. I already had my prototype designed, but this immediately gave me enough information to find these standards, go back to my engineer, and redesign a much safer product. So the things that you're going to learn in your surveys, your focus groups, your interviews are not only invaluable, but may even bring up things that you have never even considered.
And an important point here on one of these bullets says get percentage of response data. And that directly ties in to the big picture data that we talked about in the last segment, where while you're getting these questions, make sure that you include questions that you can ask that enable you to get a percentage of your audience that will purchase your product, or a percentage of your audience that experiences the problem. And be sure and provide answers in a way that you can measure that number. So if you are able to say, if you can put it in terms of a yes or no, frame it so that you can clearly get percentage data. So you can say, 20 out of 100 people said yes, they would purchase this if they had a problem. That's 20%. So now you can apply the 20% number to the much broader number that you had before. It enables you to really get specific on percentages and gives you a reason to build a business case for your product business.
I love what you just said, because really you need that kind of data so you can have percentage data, but also the open-ended questions that give you feedback, like the mom said about the safety cap. So you need both, so that one, people are sharing information that way, and the other is that they're actually, you can get numbers.
Well, yeah, and I think that's what makes it a process, because in some formats, in a very quick intercept interview, for instance, or an online survey, it's more difficult to get valid open-ended data. So some surveys are simply going to be very quick. You're going to commit to take not more than 3 minutes of their time. That's going to be more of a yes/no multiple choice survey process. Whereas when somebody comes to a focus group, for example, they know they're making a bigger commitment and they're looking forward to sharing their feedback. And I think one of the things that we've both found in this process, people tend to appreciate being asked for their opinions. And so people tend to be very forthcoming on their opinions. Where you really need to be sure and drill down is how much is truly valid versus how much is hypothetical. So for instance, the point you need to get to in your data gathering, will people buy your product? And most people, pretty much what we found, everybody loves an invention, and they'll tell you that. But when it comes to, okay, can I get your credit card so that when it comes out you'll buy it, that's a whole different degree of commitment and sense of yes, this is a viable product.
I just wanted to add one more thing before we move on, and Brad had mentioned the word intercept, and I just wanted to explain an intercept interview it's really feet in the street, meaning you're out and about. And I'll give you a quick example. One time I had a prototype in my bag, and I had taken my kids out to get some ice cream, and I saw all these parents sitting outside eating ice cream with their children, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is a perfect opportunity to get some feedback. And so I jumped to my feet and I pulled out my prototype, and I just said it. I introduced myself and I said, hey, I'm developing this new product and it's for kids about this age group, and would you be willing to give me some feedback? I'd really like to know the truth about what you think about this product. And everyone got so excited about being a part of this, and I did once again receive invaluable information about how much they would charge and what designs they liked and didn't like. And so this is a great opportunity to gather information too. Step 4 is legal, and this comes up again and again. People think that getting a patent is the first step. It is definitely not the first step. And patents can be useful tools, but they can also be a big waste of time and money. And most patented products never make it to market. And you'll also find that when you're in the stores, you'll see that many successful products are not patented at all. And so one of the best tools that we have used again and again over this last decade is called a provisional patent application. And it's a low-cost tool, and it saves money, and it actually buys you 12 months of time. And after 12 months, as you're going through your more research and development, at that time you have an option to actually apply for a utility patent.
And it's important to know, a provisional patent, some people call them provisional patents, but a provisional patent application is not a patent. It's just a placeholder so that when you do indeed choose to file a patent, you get the benefit of the date that you filed the provisional application. So if I file a provisional application today, if someone else files a patent tomorrow on the exact same idea, if I choose to file my patent in 12 months, I have the benefit of today's date, meaning it precedes that new patent that came out. This is a long process, but again, this is far from the first step, and I totally agree with what Tamara said. It is a process, and the research is much more important at this stage than jumping out and filing the patent.
And so we teach you, in fact, I did a whole video tutorial on on this in your private members area, and it's how to search patents and trademarks to get free legal insights. In fact, I did one on patents, and Brad did a video tutorial on trademarks. And essentially, there are professional attorneys who have written these patents. And so we teach you what to look for and how to really benefit from all of the hard work that other professionals have done to gain free legal insights. And what we mean by that is it's free information for you. It's right there. It's public. And then if you decide to go speak to a patent attorney, then you go fully armed with information instead of going to the first meeting asking them, what do I do? How do I get started?
What's on the market today? Yeah.
Yeah, you'll go in and have an entirely different conversation.
And you may find other opportunities. Because one of the things that we look at when we look at patents, if indeed there is a patent, remember only 2 or 3% of the people that file patents ever do anything with them. So there are many, many people who have filed and spent a tremendous amount of money on their patents, and they're just languishing there. That may be a business opportunity. You find somebody's already filed a patent, you can buy patents. So maybe you can skip a step. So take the time, learn about what's on the market. When you go to an attorney, that may be the first question you ask. By the way, this looks like a great, closely related patent. Would it behoove me to buy this patent from this inventor?
Okay, so now we're looking at manufacturability. And this is when you are thinking about your product and what materials it should be made out of. And hard goods mean things like plastic, metal, and wood, and soft goods are textile items. And when you're going through this process, it's important to really be open to all different types of materials. You may have in your mind initially that it should be made of a certain material, but again, you're going to get feedback about this material from your focus groups. But be open to using all different types of material. Also think about the complexity of the design. The more simple the product design, usually it means that it's going to cost less to produce. So these are the things to consider ahead of time.
And just to add, I think some of the things that the mistakes that perhaps we've made and we've seen others make over the years is coming to the process with such a hard, fixed notion about how something is going to look, feel, or be made of, and not truly being open and really approach it from a very open-minded perspective, because things will change. And as you hear, you need to be open to hearing different opportunities that could totally change the magnitude and the success of the opportunity.
Also, in the private members area, there is an interview with Justin ALO of Justin ALO Designs, and he is an expert in product development and design, and he talks about things you need to consider in terms of your design complexity. And one of the things he does mention is that we often come to the table with all our product design being all the bells and whistles we can even think up. And that's great. That's a great place to start in terms of brainstorming. But then you're going to work backwards and start thinking about, okay, maybe take, if there's 6 bells and whistles, what will happen if we drop it down to 3 bells and whistles? And how will that be different from other products on the market?
And the cost associated with mass production. So you're looking at the complexity, the manufacturability of your item from the standpoint of the initial design. How do we get a product design with the necessary molds or patterns set up so that we can mass produce this? But then once we go into mass production, we need to understand the impact of all of the added features. If there are electronics, if there are different types of materials, the more manual intervention into the production, the more cost. What is the implication for the mass production? And then once we understand all of that, we come up with the best possible design from the standpoint of marketability from the consumer and from the producibility. How much money is it going to cost to make this, and are we going to be able to produce it at a price point that enables us to successfully sell it?
And which brings us to step 6, because definitely wanting to weave safety into the design.
And in the safety section, what we look at safety from the standpoint of the assumption you don't want to harm anyone, you want to produce a quality product, You don't want to incur personal liability. After all, accidents happen. But you want to do everything you can to mitigate any potential liability to yourself and your business. And you do want truly to prevent injury. The last thing you want to do is harm anybody. Nobody has that motivation. So the process that is necessary to go through is again, becoming a student relating to safety and your product. You have to understand the existing safety and testing regulations that are out there. So you spend time on the Consumer Product Safety Commission website, cpsc.gov. The website is immensely better than it was when we began, and it's a very user-friendly site today. It's got a lot of valuable information. So starting out with, what are the government rules and regulations around your product? And there's some very specific, having to do with, for instance, choking hazards, flammability requirements, and things of that nature. Then you want to look at, does your item fall into a category that has an existing standard? Now, standard is a non-governmental approach where an industry group has come together and said, okay, let's develop a standard. So these are common for things like cribs and car seats and things of that nature, where competitors develop a product and they come up with specific standards. So find out if there's a standard or related standard. You can also have a conversation with a certified and independent testing lab. Again, this is a process where you're gathering as much information as possible. And these testing labs are companies that will give you a proposal, and they'll say, here are the battery of testing and examinations that we recommend. And they'll look at things like the chemical composition of your product. They'll look at they'll incorporate the various standards and the CPSC regulations and all of those things. But in the beginning, it's helpful just to get a proposal. What things should we be looking at, and can you give me a proposal for doing this? In some cases, just having a conversation with a salesperson or an individual at these organizations can be helpful. And there's the book has a lot of resources and places where you can find those test labs.
Well, also some retailers are asking for safety testing. And so sometimes they'll ask you for proof of safety testing. So it's good to go through these independent testing labs. And frankly, for me, it was peace of mind. Just knowing that the product had been tested and had passed the requirements brought peace of mind.
Well, safety testing is not an option. The retailers will require it. But you're far from that stage. So at this point in time, what you're really looking for is to know what are going to be the issues and challenges facing you in developing your product. Some items you may find this has got some issues that never occurred to me. I either need to dramatically alter the design of the product to avoid this, or I need to stay away from this, or there doesn't seem to be much of a safety challenge around this. But once you go to the manufacturing process, the factories that you use will work with you to check the safety testing box.
Right, and this ties in to the last step on manufacturability in terms of your design. So this is important information to gather that will, in fact, have an impact on your design.
So step 7 is profit. And I got a little bit ahead of myself probably when I said earlier that the market is where the rubber meets the road, and that's where it begins to meet the road. But with profit, this is what is key. This is where we look at, this is truly a business opportunity and nothing more, as Tamara said earlier. The question, can you make money with your product? Now, keeping in mind, even if you have a great product that's going to solve a big problem, if you can't make money with it, it should not be taken to market. Simple as that. Unless you have a different motivation and it has more to do with philanthropic approach. But in the case of building a business, you need to know, can I make money with my product? So how do you do that? The process is fairly simple, but it needs to be broken down. First, you have to understand the retail price. What is the likely retail price? And so you want to go to the websites and to the stores that sell comparable items, which obviously necessitates that you first identify what are comparable items and what items are similar or have similar composition or that you could liken your product to. Next is you need to understand what is the likely production cost. So you need to use overseas sourcing sites like Alibaba.com, where you can find comparable items, similar items, or items of similar composition, and make some assumptions to determine what is the likely production cost going to be of your item. Third, you need to identify what is the import cost, and we give you some examples of how to assign a basic number for overseas import costs, but that also includes things like the tariff costs. And so you need to go to the ITC website and identify what is the likely tariff cost. You know, that's often one of those surprises that people say, never occurred to me there would be another fee associated with this. So, you know, well, yeah, bad news, you got to pay for freight. You got to get your thing here. And then you also have to pay the government fee at the border when it comes in. In some cases, there's not one. In other items, for some items, the tariff can be really surprisingly high. So I mentioned the International Trade Commission website and Alibaba.com already. And so what you want to do is go then to break it down into a nice table. Okay, so what is my cost going to look like? And what that cost starts with, as I said, you have your production cost, you have your tariff, you have your freight forwarding, and then any other surprising costs or other costs that you uncover in your process to come up with your total cost. And that's really the basis for your cost estimate. And when you have your cost estimate, and we'll do this in the last step as well, but when you have your cost estimate, then you're also going to take a look at your estimated retail estimate price. And so now you have two key numbers. What you think you can sell it for at a retail price point, and then your underlying cost. So the only piece that's missing is with the presumption that you're going to sell to retailers who are then going to sell it to the retail client. That's a middleman. So we need to back out that number a little bit.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about competition. And one of the ways to look at your competition is to figure out how people are currently solving the problem that your product solves. And if you think that you've got a product that that is brand new and there's nothing else like it on the market, it's still important to look at how people are currently dealing with the issue that you say that your product is going to solve. And then you're going to figure out what products or processes will your product replace or eliminate, and what directly competing products are there on the market. And time and time again, inventors have come to me and said that there are no competing products on the market. And then by searching online, as Brad mentioned, Alibaba.com, he was using it for pricing purposes, but I also like to go there just to see if there are competitive products there. And just do all of your searching online to see what is there. Also go into small stores as well as into big box stores. And because all three of those stores, and also online catalogs, they all try to differentiate themselves from each other. And so they will oftentimes carry different types of products. And so make sure that you are looking everywhere. Also, a helpful tip that I have used is to get a thesaurus or a synonym finder and use different words to describe your product. Because if you are searching through Google, let's say, and you are describing your product with a certain term, and you do that over and over again, trying to find things in that certain, and nothing is popping up, it could be that you're just not using a word that is being used in a different way. So instead of saying fabric, you could say material, or, I'm making this up, but the point is to use different words to describe your product in every way you can imagine in order to bring up a really thorough search.
Well, I think part of the key to this also is in the section where you're getting feedback from real consumers. They're going to be a major source of the answers to this question as well, because you're going to ask them, how do you solve the problem that this product will solve today? And some people are going to tell you that they buy a competing product. Some people are going to tell you, describe the workaround that they currently use to address that issue. And some will say, I don't solve it today because it's not a problem. So that's going to be another source of information relating directly to this step.
And then, of course, look at your competition in terms of what other companies are making and distributing the product. How is your product different from what's already out there on the market? And if you see something that's similar, don't despair. I mean, it may mean that it's not worth pursuing, but you also need to see how your product is solving a problem maybe in a different way. And when you go into a store, you'll often see a variety of the same types of products that are just a little bit different from each other, and consumers like to have choices.
They like to have choices and also understand the number of retail outlets in the United States. Of course, anybody can sell a product online, but also understand that with 50,000 drug and grocery stores in the U.S. and countless boutiques and hundreds of catalogs and online stores, you have such an opportunity to sell to customers that the competition is not going to be in all of those stores. So you have an opportunity to convince a buyer to take your item on in some of the stores where they're not.
Right, which I think leads us nicely into distribution. So
this is relevant to the competition because you're asking yourself, how and where will my products be sold? You have to again, this also ties back to the feedback step where you're identifying what is the nature of my customer and where do they shop and what do they look for. Some items are truly mass items. They are typically more, they tend to become commoditized more quickly. They are tend to be the type of thing that's used every day or often and accessible or useful to a very large variety of people. So some things like food items, everybody eats food, everybody buys food. So those are going to be distributed pretty much everywhere. Everybody buys paper towels, everybody buys dishware, things like that are broadly distributed across a wide array, including some of the big box chains. But some items, their distinction is that they're unique. They're specific to a particular need. Maybe they're a medical device, or maybe it's a more related to a particular pursuit or hobby. It's specific to certain people who pursue certain things. So people who go out are skiers have certain products that they purchase. Well, those are less likely to be distributed in a grocery and drugstore, but they are very clearly sold in specific industry-specific chains and stores. Smaller items that require perhaps a certain degree of sales expertise, similarly, are going to be sold in different ways than items that can simply be sold based on the packaging and the price point. So this is the business assessment. This is where it all comes together from a financial perspective. So we talked a little bit about this in the earlier step where we were looking at the underlying costs. And this is where you identify your retail price estimate, and we talked about this earlier, where you go out and you figure out what is the likely price that your item can be sold for. And we walk you through this process in the tutorials, as in the book, in the workbook. But in a very brief summary, you're going to get a high and a low estimate of what your price point would be for your product through different channels, websites, stores, and so forth. Then we're going to take an assumption that most retailers, if you're going to sell through retail channel, most retailers are going to want what we call a keystone markup. So that's essentially cutting your the retail price, the price that the end consumer pays, in half. So that brings that price down. In this case, looking at the optimistic column here, that would bring the retail price of $30 down to a wholesale price of $15. Now what I mean by that is that's the price that the retailer is going to pay you to ship to them a large number of your product. So they're going to pay you $15 per unit. Now you also have to factor in the cost that you pay your factory, because you had to have your item produced and shipped and delivered with the tariffs paid and the warehousing fees paid and everything else. And so now your landing price is going to be $5. So in this scenario, your gross profit is going to be $10. When we look at gross profit, we want to make sure that your gross profit is adequate, because it's from the gross profit that you're going to sell, that you're going to pay all of the other expenses. So this is just the costs and the profit relating to the product itself. But keep in mind, every business has costs. Those are your marketing costs, your sales costs, your advertising, your trade shows, your salary, the insurance costs. All of the other costs come out of this gross profit. And so that's going to be very important. Now, another point that I just like to make is when you look at the price you pay your factory and relate that to the retail price, there's a very important metric that we look at. Does the price, my production cost, equal 20% or less of the retail price? So 1/5 of the retail price. So in this case, does $30, does $5 equal 1/5 or less of $30? And if that's the case, then I can pretty much assume I have a viable product, financially speaking. Doesn't mean anybody's going to buy it, but it means financially speaking, I have a viable product. And so now when I look at the gross profit of $10, and then I say, okay, my estimate of my market that I can sell to is 50,000 people based on what we did in the earlier steps. Now I can see that my total gross profit on an optimistic scenario is going to be $500,000. That's how we build a business model. We also typically take a conservative approach. Let's say everything doesn't work out quite as well as the optimistic scenario. So now I have a range. I have a total gross profit on the optimistic side of $500,000 and on the conservative side of $150,000. I have now made a very good business outline. Here is what this business could look like, both optimistically and conservatively. Anybody that comes and talks to you about your business, or you start talking to them about your product business, when you show them this degree of careful analytics based upon real market information, real pricing and cost information, and real evaluation, you have set yourself a mile apart from 99% of the inventors on the marketplace who purely run out and get a patent and start talking about why they have the next best thing.
At the end of each of the sections and steps, you have an opportunity to review that step and to give yourself a rating. And so now this is the culmination really at the end. And Brad, did you want to speak to this?
This was really designed because, remember at the beginning, Tamara mentioned the goal here is to approach this as a business, nothing more. And so to take out that emotional element, and by the way, we don't suggest that this is not an emotional process and it doesn't require stamina and passion and all those things. It absolutely does. But this is the phase of the business where you want to try and separate the emotion from the analytics side of the business. And what the goal of this step was really to try and provide you with the ability to, again, make it an objective metric so that you can say, okay, objectively speaking, if I was trying to make an evaluation of a product that wasn't mine, objectively speaking, how does this product stack up? And at the end of each section in the book, in the workbook, you have now ranked or rated your product based on the information you got out of each section. Well, this is simply just adding up those numbers that you've tallied in each section to give yourself as much as possible an honest evaluation. This is what this product looks like. And if you had a 30, in other words, you ranked it as a 3 in each section, 30 is the best, and that's obviously the goal or the ideal. Most products aren't going to be a 30 though. Now, I want to point out, this does not mean you won't decide to take your product forward. But what it does is it gives you an honest assessment for yourself where you've really been able to separate yourself from the business emotionally and looked at it much more analytically.
And then once you've gone through the rating system, you make the call. You're going to be so much farther along in terms of knowing whether or not it makes sense to go for it and say, let's go, and you're ready to take this product to market. Or you may find, no, not yet, I need some more information. And now that this whole process is broken down step by step, you can dive into those areas where you're feeling like you still need to spend some more time and get more information. And then also you may feel like, wow, this is not going to make sense for me to bring it to market. There's too much financial risk and I'm going to let go. And I think that it's important for you to know that, we feel that this is letting go of a product is just as successful as taking a product to market.
If you've done this kind of research, that's absolutely as much success.
I love this quote by Alexander Graham Bell. He says, "When one door closes, another door opens. But we so often look so long and so regretfully upon the closed door that we do not see the ones which open for us." So sometimes when you let go of an idea that has been consuming all of your time and energy, once you let that go, other ideas come forward. And plus, think about it. You've gone through this process. You may have had other ideas come up during this process, through your research, through your surveys, through all of the steps that you've taken. You may even have a hotter idea that now you are going to go back and go through the process with.
And that's a really good point, because inventors typically by nature are creative. And so you don't want to invest your time and money in an idea that may not be your best. And so this may help you sift through the ideas that lack, that don't have the potential as the other idea. And it's ironic, because I remember a case where one inventor had come to us and she had this idea that she was passionate about, and really on the surface it seemed like it had less potential than another idea that was of secondary interest. And by really looking at the potential, she was able to come to the conclusion, you know what, I need to build a business, and this one is just not going to be it. And so that opportunity is truly there. And by the way, when you do determine, hey, this is a go, you are so empowered to really then powerfully launch into really what is the next step. And by doing this process, the next step will become crystal clear for you as well. So you've created such a foundation to either pursue a different business opportunity, whatever it may be, that and we have unlimited opportunities to pursue in terms of to employ our resources and our time and our money, or to take this product to the next level. You will have created a foundation and really enable you to accelerate your success in your process.
So we hope this Kickstart meeting and webinar has served you well, and keep in mind that you can go back now and go through your book and your workbook. All of the online video tutorials are in the private members area. They're in depth, in detail. So if there was any aspect of this where you thought, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do that, don't worry. We have spent hours upon hours developing these video tutorials for you so that we could show you how to do this. So hopefully we've just outlined these steps enough so that you can say, hey, I can do this, which you can. And so we hope that you'll go ahead, log into the members area, and get started right now.
Thank you very much. And don't forget to take advantage of the resources in the back of the book. If you have a book, there's a tremendous list of resources as well. All the websites we mentioned, as well as a lot of others that will help walk you through this process.